Hello, friends, and welcome to Pour and Explore wine, food, and travel stories from around the world. I'm Nick Elliott, the wine guy. This is where we sip, savor, and wander through the world of wine, explore incredible food, and uncover the stories behind unforgettable destinations. Each week, you'll hear engaging conversations with wine pros, chefs, travelers, and fellow enthusiasts, plus educational episodes to help you sip smarter and explore deeper. So, grab a glass, pull up a chair, and let's pour, explore, and celebrate the good life. Let's dive in. Hey there, everyone, and thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate you spend some time with me here on Pour and Explore. I'm Nick Elliott, your wine guy, and if this is your first time, welcome and welcome to the No Snob Zone. Now, I don't want to alarm anyone, but wine has a massive problem. People are terrified of it. They are worried they're holding the glass wrong, pronouncing the grape wrong, or breaking some secret wine law that's going to get them kicked out of the restaurant. Today, we're tearing down those gates. We're going to talk about wine faux pas and the no pas. I'm going to tell you which rule are absolute BS and which two or three actually help the wine taste better. Stick around because by the end of the episode, I'm going to tell you why putting an ice cube in your $15 Chardonnay isn't just okay, it might actually be the smartest thing you do all summer. So stick around. Anyway, let's start with the biggest faux pas of them all, and that is thinking you're doing it wrong. Really, thinking you're doing it wrong is the worst possible thing you can do for yourself and for your wine. Look, wine isn't a final exam. There's no grades involved or anything like that. And moreover, you're not there to impress anyone. If anything, all of those people are there to impress you if they want to sell you a bottle of wine or a glass of wine, as far as I'm concerned. My mantra is keep it simple. You drink what you like. You drink what you like. If you like the wine, you're doing it right. Period. That's that end of story. That's all there is. The only real mistake you can make is letting some gatekeeper make you feel small because you enjoyed a glass of rosé in the middle of February, or a glass of cab, after Labor Day. I don't know. The silly, silly rules. Again, I'm going to keep using the quotations that absolutely make no sense other than, possibly tradition or this is the way we've always done it, but again, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. Wine is simply fermented grape juice. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyable, and it is not meant to be a performance. All right, let's move on from there and talk a little bit about glassware or the glassware anxiety. People ask me all the time, Nick, do I need a different glass for every single grape variety or grape type that is out there? The answer is no. The answer is 100% no. Here's the truth. Holding a wine glass by the stem keeps your hands from warming up the wine. That's it. That's the only reason they tell you to do that. If you want to hold it by the bowl, the part that the wine actually sits in, you're not a bad person. You're not doing it wrong. The only thing that might happen is you might warm up the wine a little bit faster than it would on its own. It might come to room temperature a little bit more quickly. But if you're anything like me, that wine's probably gone by the time you get the opportunity to do that. But, you're not doing it wrong. And maybe you're drinking your wine out of a stemless glass or a jelly jar or one of your Star Wars collectible cups. Guess what? That's okay too. As long as the glass is clean and not chipped, it's a good glass. Don't let the shape of the vessel that you're drinking your wine from stop you from enjoying what's inside. You drink what you like and you drink it how you like it. If that is the way you prefer it and you enjoy it, that's all there is to it, everybody. So let's take it down and make it easier on yourself. All right, here is where I am going to put my sommelier hat on for just a second. Well, actually, let's step back for a second. This is not something that I've ever really addressed on the show, but I will talk about it here very quickly. What is a sommelier? The word sommelier, or the job of a sommelier, is someone who is there to educate you about wine. And that's what I do. And this might be in a restaurant setting, where they've got a special wine steward that is there, who knows all of the bottles on the menu, or is supposed to anyway. And they have, ideas as far as which wines pair best with the food on that menu in particular. Now, obviously, as SOMs, our expertise will and usually goes way beyond that, but our job, a sommelier's job, is to teach you about the wine and to help you, in the case of a restaurant som, is to help you choose the best bottle of wine for your meal and probably more importantly for your budget. We learn the rules up front. I don't follow a lot of the rules, for myself or even for the people that I teach. I look at wine as a lot of fun. We should be having a good time with it. It should be something enjoyable, not something that we need to, wrap all of this, cloak and dagger mystery into it. It's something that everyone should enjoy. So to that end, that's what I teach. I teach people should drink what they like. And if what you like is a $5 bottle of wine for Trader Joe's, fantastic. If your favorite bottle is a $200 bottle of Bordeaux that was, grown in France and shipped to, the US on Camelback or whatever the case is, and that's what you prefer, then that's fantastic too. We make our decisions on a lot of different things. Budget, of course, what we grew up with, we make our decisions on a lot of different things. So, the most important thing is you drink what you like. So I'm gonna put my sommelier hat on for just a second, and I'm gonna tell you about one rule that I do think is worth following, and that is temperature. How the temperature at which we serve our wine. Most people serve red wine way too warm, in my opinion. And a lot of people will serve their white wine ice cold. We hear that room temperature for reds, is the way to go, but remember, that rule again, here we go with the air quotes again, that rule was probably coined 500 years ago when people lived in stone castles. So room temperature was different, when wine became a thing. So let's start talking in modern terms, about homes with central heat and central air, because room temperature is going to be a different thing. So here are some basics. Red wine, when we're talking about red wine now, I'm generalizing with every red wine. I could do 5 episodes on, the real breakdown of this, but red wine, let's put that in a container. If it tastes flabby, now what do I mean by flabby? If it's too big and there's, it's not giving you any of those acidic notes, if it's not bright, it's kind of just like dull in your mouth, or if the alcohol feels like it's burning your throat, that means that that wine is probably too warm. So go ahead and stick that bottle back in the fridge, or in the fridge, I should say, for 15 minutes to 20 minutes and let it cool down for a bit. And I promise you that wine is going to taste better once it's cooled down. So that's number one. With white wine, if you can't smell anything, and again, I'm generalizing. This is Chardonnay, this is Albarino, this is any Italian white, et cetera, et cetera. If you can't smell anything, it's because that wine is too darn cold. It's if it has 0 aroma to it, it means that that wine I mean, well, it could mean 2 things. It could also mean that it's a bad wine. I would say this also, counts for the red wine too, but let's say it's a perfectly good wine and you put it in your glass and you can't smell anything is because that wine is too darn cold. Think about it this way. We are chilling the wine to the point where the literally the molecules are not moving. And part of the molecular structure of wine are the aroma molecules. And if those are too cold, they're not going to do what they do, which is smell. So, from a very scientific standpoint, which I'm not going to dive too much into, you're not going to get anything on the nose. And therefore, you want to take that bottle and you want to let it sit out on the counter for that same 15 to 20 minutes and let it warm up ever so slightly. Or if you are having, if you're lucky enough to have a wine fridge in your house, you can adjust the temperatures accordingly to for the reds just below room temperature, 57-ish, 60-ish degrees, something along those lines. And then for your whites, just above refrigerator temperature, so 47 to 52-ish degrees, something along those lines. And it's not for every wine, by any means. And that's why we kind of have to, in my household, my wife likes her red wine cooler. So I have a cooler that we keep. You've probably heard me say this before. I've got a cooler that we keep red wines in that is a little bit cooler. I keep it at about 45 degrees, something like that. For me, that's a little too cool. So what I'll do is when I pour us each a glass of wine for the night, I'll just allow mine to sit out on the counter for a few minutes before I start enjoying it. And I feel for me that is better. But my wife likes it colder. And what's the wine guy's motto? You drink what you like and you drink it how you like it. So I am more than happy to give her an ice cold glass of wine every night with dinner. You know, it's not a faux pas to adjust your wine. It just makes it taste better. So I'll get off of that rant and move on to the next topic. Let's talk for a few minutes about restaurants and enjoying wine at restaurants, because we have the ability to do all of those things that I was just talking about at home very easily, down to the choice of wine we're making, the choice of what to drink that wine in to decide whether or not it's too warm or too cold, for us for our enjoyment. But at a restaurant, things are a little bit different. So we kind of have to go in the confines, which I'm going to talk a little bit more in just a second. But I want to talk about let's settle the restaurant panic, if we will. When the sommelier pours you that little taste of wine, you order your bottle, finally, the som pours you the taste of wine. They're not asking if you like the wine. What they're asking is if that wine is flawed in some way. So, for those of you who have heard my whole episode or several episodes on actually tasting wine and how to properly taste wine, it starts with looking at it. And then the second step in enjoying a glass of wine is smelling it. And we smell it not only to enjoy the aroma, but we smell it initially to make sure that that wine is not flawed. And what I mean by flawed is that there is something in that wine that has made it turn. Now, wine pretty much across the board is made to last years and years and years and years and years. But there are certain organisms, and bacteria and things like that that can get into your bottle of wine that can turn it. So, for example, if the wine that you are tasting or smelling smells like wet cardboard, that means there's likely a problem with the cork. If it smells like vinegar, obviously there is an issue with that, because something has turned that wine into vinegar or is in the process of turning that wine into vinegar, and that's gross. And that wine is definitely a sender back, if you will. If you don't like the flavor, that's okay. You can still drink the wine and have a great meal. You just bought that bottle. Just because you didn't like it, just like if you got your food and you ate, some of it, if you didn't like it, that is a you thing. And I'm not saying something that's necessarily popular, but you not liking it is not necessarily a reason to send it back. Now, if your steak tastes moldy or if your potatoes, smell like soap, or something like that, then obviously, that is an issue, so I just wanted to cover that for, a minute and, talk about the restaurant panic in general. Now, I kind of jumped ahead and we were talking about you actually getting the wine at the table, the wine that you ordered and them pouring it for you and so on, and whether it's a sommelier that you worked with or just the server and not just the server. Servers are amazing. I didn't mean to say just the server, but they're not a som, they're not necessarily a wine expert. In this case, if you're working with anyone that works in the restaurant, and they bring you the wine, they pour you a little taste, go ahead and and smell it and make sure that it doesn't smell funny. But before we get to that point, we need to actually order the wine. And that's where a lot of times the decision making on the wine, tends to put us into a panic. It's something that we feel that if we choose the wrong thing or again pronounce the word incorrectly or something like that, that it's the entire restaurant's going to explode or something along the and for the love of all things holy, pronunciation does not matter. If a waiter corrects your French with an attitude, they are the ones that are committing the faux pas. That's not you. So I just want to say, going into the ordering process, is it can be intimidating 100%, especially if you have a wine list that has 500 different bottles on it, or even a wine list with 10 different bottles of wine on it. If you're not familiar with any of those wines, that list can be intimidating. I've done full episodes on how to order wines from a list. Go, check the library, check the table of contents here, and there are great episodes on that. So I'm not going to go into great detail about that, but the main overall thing that I'm trying to say here for you folks is that there doesn't need to be panic. There doesn't need to be intimidation around ordering a bottle of wine off a restaurant menu. And, because if you think you're doing it wrong, I can guarantee you're not. It's if you don't know what you don't know, so you go in, that's why you listen to the show. You listen to Pour and Explore and you learn about wine and you're learning things to do and things not to do and all of that good stuff. So kudos for you for being here. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. You guys know the email address. You can always get me on social media, and that stuff is always in the show notes down below as well. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always happy to give free advice. I like paid advice better, but you can always certainly reach out to me. And I mentioned that at the top of the show, putting ice in your wine. Oh, putting ice in your wine. And what about that ice cube? If it's 90 degrees out and your wine is warm, drop some ice in it. It's not going to affect it that much. It's going to lower the temperature. It's going to water it down ever so slightly. But if you're drinking a good glass of wine, then that shouldn't be an issue. It is your glass of wine. It is your glass. It's your rules. You make the decision. You know, I'll put my sun hat back on for just a moment. Just don't do it to your friend's 1982 Bordeaux without asking first. But, certainly drink what you like and drink it how you like it. I cannot say that enough. At the end of the day, wine it's agricultural, it's social. In my mind, it's meant to bring us together. And if we feel intimidated about it, that's just going to detach you more from the wine, from the people at the restaurant, from your family, from the group, whoever it is. Your anxiety around wine is going to make you feel more detached. And if I want you to walk away with anything from this episode, I want to reduce that intimidation factor. I want to reduce that anxiety. I want to reduce that panic around wine because it doesn't need to be there. This is something that's meant to be enjoyed, you know, and, if it ever feels like there's a velvet rope keeping you out, just remember, I'm here to help you duck under it. So please, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Go to the website, thewineguy.vin, thewineguy.vin, and, check out, send me an email, send me a contact. I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter, my new newsletter on Substack. You'll find that information on the website. I would really, really appreciate that. And do me one more favor. If you wouldn't mind, if you enjoyed today's episode, share it with that one friend or two friends or 10 friends who is always afraid of the wine list. Do me and your friend a favor today by sharing this episode. I promise you it's going to make them feel better. It's going to make me feel great. And hopefully it's going to make you feel good as well. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And everybody keep wondering and wandering. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Pour and Explore. I'd love to hear your thoughts, love to hear your stories or questions. Drop me a message at cheers@thewineguy.vin. That's cheers@thewineguy.vin. Or let's connect on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Grab those links at thewineguy.vin. Until next time, let's keep wondering and wandering. Cheers, everybody.